My slutty cousin tried to fuck every date I brought to holidays. Until I showed up with my prison pen pal. My name's Emily, and I'm 32 years old. I grew up in Michigan, in one of those families where everyone lives within about 20 miles of each other, and showing up to every birthday, barbecue, or baby shower isn't optional. It's mandatory if you want to avoid Grandma June's wrath. Brianna is my cousin on my mom's side, 2 years younger than me, and since we were kids, she's always been the golden child. That's just Brianna. She's gorgeous, in that unfair kind of way that makes other women roll their eyes. Long blonde hair, bright green eyes, a body that could make anyone stare. She's the kind of woman who could walk out in a garbage bag and still have men tripping over themselves. And the worst part? She knows it. She's known it since we were teenagers. The first time she really crossed a line was when I was 23. I was dating this guy, Ethan, a graphic designer, shy but sweet, the kind of man who made me feel calm just being around him. We'd been together for about 4 months when Thanksgiving rolled around. I was nervous to bring him to meet my family because, well, my family can be a lot. But Ethan said he wanted to go. He told me he was serious about me, that he wanted to know the people who mattered in my life. Dinner was at my Aunt Carol's that year. Brianna showed up wearing a tiny red dress that looked more like something for a club than a family holiday. Of course, nobody said a word. No one ever tells Brianna no. My mom just gave me that look, half warning, half let it go, and went back to mashing potatoes. After dinner, Ethan and I were sitting on the couch, chatting with my uncle about football or something when Brianna came over and plopped herself right between us. She literally wedged herself into the middle and pressed her leg against Ethan's. Then came the giggles, the endless questions about his job, the casual arm touches, and those strategic little bends forward that showed way too much of that red dress. I was sitting right there. She acted like I was invisible. Ethan looked uncomfortable, but he was still a guy, and Brianna was Brianna. Later that night, I caught them in the kitchen. She had her hand on his chest, laughing at something he'd said. When they saw me, Brianna just smiled all innocent and said, "I was just telling Ethan how lucky he is to have you." 3 weeks later, Ethan told me he needed space. Said he wasn't ready for something serious. 2 months after that, I saw him on Brianna's Instagram, arm around her waist, both of them grinning at some bar downtown. That's when I realized it wasn't a one-time thing. It was a pattern. Every single guy I ever brought home, Brianna somehow sank her claws in. Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, 4th of July, it didn't matter. If I showed up with a date, she'd show up looking like she was headed to a nightclub, and by the end of the night, she had his attention. There was Jake, the teacher I dated when I was 25. Brianna cornered him at the dessert table and talked his ear off about her work with underprivileged kids. They swapped numbers supposedly to plan a volunteer day. They ended up texting for weeks. Then came Aaron, the accountant. Brianna asked him to help her move furniture into her apartment. I wasn't invited. When I brought it up, Aaron got defensive, called me jealous and controlling. And then there was Logan, Sean, Ben. Every single one of them fell into the same trap. The worst part was that my family didn't just ignore it, they excused it. My mom pulled me aside once and said Brianna was still young and didn't mean any harm. My aunt told me not to bring men around if I couldn't handle a little competition. And Grandma? She told me to be more feminine, to work on myself if I wanted a man's attention. After a few years of that, I stopped bringing dates altogether. I'd show up alone, smile, and tell everyone I was focusing on my career and perfectly happy being single. The truth? I'd started dating women. Quietly. Privately. And for the first time in my life, I felt safe, because I knew Brianna couldn't touch that. But when I turned 31, I met someone new. His name was Nathan, and he felt different, steady, kind, funny, and gorgeous in a way that didn't make me nervous. He was a doctor, and we'd been together about 8 months when Christmas came around. I'd managed to dodge most family gatherings up to that point, but I couldn't avoid Christmas forever. So I sat Nathan down and told him everything about Brianna, how she was, what she did, every detail. I told him to keep his guard up, to ignore her, to stay close to me no matter what. He laughed. He actually laughed. "Emily," he said, "I'm a grown man. Your cousin's not going to seduce me at Christmas. I love you. You have nothing to worry about." And I wanted to believe him. I really did. Christmas Eve came, and as we drove to my parents' house, I felt sick to my stomach. Nathan kept squeezing my hand and telling me it was going to be fine. Brianna was already there when we arrived. She was wearing a white sweater dress that looked painted onto her body and heels that made her legs go on forever. Her hair was perfect, all loose waves, like she'd just stepped out of a photo shoot. She looked like a damn Victoria's Secret model. When she saw Nathan, her eyes lit up like she'd just hit the jackpot. "You must be Nathan," she said, beaming at him. "I've heard so much about you. Emily's a lucky woman." Then she hugged him too long, too tight. Nathan was polite but distant. He kept his arm around my waist, kissed my forehead, and stayed close. For a moment, I let myself relax. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe Nathan really was different. But Brianna was patient. She always was. She hovered around us all night, slipping into our conversations, laughing at Nathan's jokes, asking him endless questions about his work. At one point, she accidentally spilled wine on her dress and asked Nathan to help clean it because, of course, he's a doctor. I saw him hesitate. I saw the look he gave me. And then I watched him follow her into the kitchen. They were gone for 15 minutes. When they came back, her dress was spotless and Nathan's face was flushed. He said they'd just been talking about her mom's upcoming knee surgery. I wanted to scream. We left early. I told my family I had a headache. Nathan drove us home in silence while I sat there in the passenger seat, crying quietly the whole way. He swore up and down that nothing had happened. Said he loved me, that Brianna was just being friendly, and that I was overreacting. But I could see it in his eyes, that same flicker I'd seen before. The curiosity. The quiet interest. We broke up in February. He told me he needed to focus on his residency training. Then, in March, I saw him at a restaurant with a blonde woman. It wasn't Brianna, but she might as well have been her twin. That was it for me. I was done. I stopped dating. I stopped showing up to family gatherings. When my mom called, I told her I was buried in work and would visit later. She sounded disappointed, but honestly, I didn't care anymore. I was tired of feeling small. Tired of losing. And most of all, tired of Brianna winning. Then, out of nowhere, something unexpected happened. I signed up to volunteer for a library program that helped inmates improve their reading and writing skills. One of the options was a pen pal exchange. You'd write letters to prisoners who wanted to learn better English. I joined mostly because I needed something to fill the empty hours. It felt good to do something useful. They paired me with a man named Dylan. He was 34, serving the last 2 years of a 7-year sentence for robbery. His first letter was short, just a few lines thanking me for volunteering and saying he hoped to get better at writing before his release. I wrote him back. I told him about my job as a project manager at a tech company, how I loved hiking, and what Michigan weather was like that week. Simple stuff. He responded with more about himself, his childhood in Detroit, the stupid decisions he made when he was young, and how prison had forced him to slow down and really think about his life. His writing wasn't polished, but it was honest. There was something raw and real about it that I found strangely comforting. At first, we wrote once a week. Then twice. Eventually, it turned into almost every day. Dylan told me about the books he was reading, the anger management classes he was taking, and his plans once he got out, finding a construction job, maybe taking classes at a community college. He mentioned an aunt in Grand Rapids who'd offered him a place to stay until he got on his feet. I opened up too. I told him about my family, about Brianna, about how invisible she made me feel, how angry and small I sometimes became around her. Dylan never judged me. He didn't tell me to move on or be more confident. He just said, "Your cousin sounds like a sad person, someone who only feels good when she makes others feel bad." That's not on you, Emily. That's on her. The simplicity of that hit me harder than I expected. We wrote for 8 months. And somewhere along the way, his letters became the highlight of my week. He was funny, thoughtful, vulnerable in ways the men I'd dated never were. Maybe that was because he had nothing to hide, or maybe that was just who he was. Then one day, he wrote to tell me he'd be released in 2 months. He asked if I'd consider meeting him in person, just coffee, no pressure. Said he'd understand completely if I said no, given how complicated it all was. I said yes. I don't even know why. Maybe I was lonely. Maybe I was curious. Maybe I just wanted to do something that didn't have Brianna's shadow hanging over it. Dylan was released in October. We met at a small cafe in Grand Rapids. I was nervous. This was someone I'd been writing to for months, but had never actually seen. Then he walked in, and I recognized him right away. Tall, broad shoulders, short dark hair, that nervous little smile. He was handsome, but in a natural, unpolished way, real, not glossy. We ended up talking for 3 hours straight. The conversation flowed easily, no awkward pauses, no small talk that felt forced. He told me about his new job at a lumber yard, about living with his aunt, about adjusting to normal life again. I told him about my apartment, my work, and yes, my crazy family. When he asked if he could see me again, I didn't even hesitate. I said yes. It felt strange calling it a relationship at first, but that's what it became. We went to the movies, grabbed dinner, walked along the river on weekends. Dylan wasn't like anyone I'd dated before. He listened when I spoke. He didn't play mind games. He meant what he said, and he really saw me in a way that almost scared me. He could tell when I was anxious or upset without me having to say a word. He knew when to give me space and when to pull me close. For the first time in my life, I felt understood. In November, my mom called and asked if I'd come home for Thanksgiving. I'd been dodging her calls for months, but this time she sounded hopeful. She said everyone missed me, that Grandma June kept asking about me, and that it had been almost a year since I'd come for a holiday. I told her I'd think about it. That night, lying in bed with Dylan, I brought it up. I told him why I didn't want to go, how every family gathering ended the same way, how Brianna always found a way to ruin things. He was quiet for a while, then said, "Take me with you." I laughed. "Trust me," I said, "you don't want to meet my family." But he didn't back down. "I'm serious. Take me to Thanksgiving. I want to meet them, especially your cousin." I told him that was a terrible idea. I warned him that Brianna would flirt, that she'd try to get him alone, that she'd done it with every single man I'd ever cared about. I told him she was manipulative and beautiful and cruel. Dylan just shrugged. "Emily," he said, "I was in prison for 7 years. I think I can handle your cousin." I thought about it for a while, and then I thought, screw it. What did I have to lose? Brianna would try to seduce him. I'd lose another relationship. Maybe I'd cut my family off for good. Honestly, I was already halfway there. So I said yes. The morning of Thanksgiving, I woke up with a knot in my stomach. Dylan was calm, almost too calm. He wore a simple button-up and jeans, clean, neat, nothing flashy. He looked like the kind of man you'd bring home to your parents. As we drove to my folks' place, I warned him again. "Brianna's going to come after you," I said. "She'll flirt. She'll touch you. She'll try to get you alone. Please, just stay close to me. Don't let her pull you in." Dylan reached over, took my hand, and said, "Emily, I'm not going anywhere. I promise." When we walked into my parents' house, the whole family was already there. When we walked through the door, my mom hugged me like I'd been gone for years. My dad shook Dylan's hand and asked what he did for a living. "Construction," Dylan said. That was all my dad needed to start telling a 10-minute story about how he built the deck last summer and nearly broke his back doing it. Then came Brianna. She floated in from the kitchen like she was making an entrance. She was wearing this tight black dress with a low neckline and ridiculous little tassels that swung when she moved. Her hair was perfect. Her makeup was flawless. She looked like she was headed to a cocktail party, not a family Thanksgiving. And the second her eyes landed on Dylan, I could practically see the gears turning in her head. That same predatory little smile crept onto her face as she walked over. "You must be Dylan," she said, reaching out her hand. "I'm Brianna, Emily's cousin." Dylan shook her hand, polite but brief. "Nice to meet you." Brianna held on just a moment too long. "I haven't heard anything about you," she said with that fake sweet tone. "Emily keeps her life so private." Then she looked at me with that innocent smile she'd perfected. "So, how long have you two been together?" "About a few months," I said. "That's adorable," she replied, tilting her head. "How did you two meet?" I froze for a second. I didn't know how to answer without starting family drama, but Dylan didn't hesitate. "Through a letter-writing program," he said calmly. Brianna's eyes lit up. "Oh, like one of those online pen pal things? How charming." "Something like that," Dylan replied, his voice steady and unreadable. Then she launched into her usual act, asking him about his job, where he grew up, what he liked to do for fun. She laughed too loudly at his every answer, brushed his arm when she spoke, leaned forward just enough to make sure he noticed her neckline. Same routine. Same playbook. But Dylan didn't bite. He was polite, yes, but distant. He gave short answers and then turned back to me or whoever else was talking. He even kept his hand on my back the whole time, like a quiet little anchor. At one point, Brianna tried, "Dylan, would you mind helping me grab a few extra chairs from the garage?" He smiled and said, "I think your dad's got it," and stayed right beside me. I could see her frustration. Normally, it didn't take her more than 10 minutes to find an excuse to get a guy alone. But Dylan wasn't nervous. He wasn't flattered. He was just uninterested. Dinner went on as usual. Brianna sat across from us, doing everything she could to draw his attention, asking about sports, movies, music, telling stories that were clearly meant to make her sound adventurous and irresistible. She laughed a little too loud when the jokes weren't funny. Dylan stayed perfectly calm. He nodded, smiled occasionally, but spent most of the meal chatting with my uncle about fishing and asking my grandma for her stuffing recipe. Under the table, he held my hand. After dinner, everyone drifted into the living room. Brianna made her move again, pulling Dylan aside to the little drink table in the corner. My stomach twisted. I watched them from across the room, already bracing for the familiar ending, the whispered conversation, the exchange of numbers, the start of another heartbreak. I saw her lean in close. I saw her touch his chest and whisper something in his ear. Then Dylan took a step back. He said something I couldn't hear and walked away, right back over to me. He sat down beside me on the couch, calm as ever. Brianna just stood there for a moment by the drink table, her face tight, her glass untouched. My mom leaned over and whispered, "I like him. He seems grounded." I almost cried. We stayed another hour. Brianna tried a few more times, but Dylan never budged. He stayed with me, chatted with my family, acted like Brianna was just another person in the room, not the center of the universe she thought she was. For the first time in years, I could actually breathe when we said goodbye. In the car, I finally asked him, "What did Brianna say to you over there?" He hesitated, then said quietly, "She told me you were broken and insecure, that I could do better." Then she gave me her number. I felt my whole body tense. "And what did you say?" He looked at me, steady and calm. "I told her I wasn't interested, and maybe she should work on herself before she goes around wrecking other people's lives." That's when I broke. I started crying, not the kind of crying that comes from sadness, but the kind that happens when something heavy finally lifts off your chest after years of holding it in. I'd been tense for so long, and suddenly, it all just poured out. Dylan wrapped his arms around me and held me tight while I cried in the passenger seat. He didn't say a word. He didn't tell me to stop. He just held on. When I finally calmed down, he said, "Emily, I spent 7 years in prison. You learn pretty fast how to spot people who thrive on drama. Your cousin's miserable. You can see it in her eyes. She's not confident, she's not happy, she's desperate. And desperate people? They're boring." He gave my hand a squeeze. "Besides," he said, "I'm in love with you. Why would I ever want someone else when I already have you?" Right there, on the side of the road, I kissed him. Hard. Like my whole life depended on that moment. That should have been the end of it. Dylan had proved he was different. Brianna had finally failed. For once in my life, I'd won. But life has a way of twisting when you least expect it. A week later, my mom called. She didn't even say hello, just launched straight in. Apparently, Brianna had come over crying, saying I'd brought an ex-convict to Thanksgiving without warning anyone. She said she'd looked him up online and that she felt unsafe and disrespected. I was furious. "Mom," I said, "Dylan served his time. He's a good man. Brianna's just mad she couldn't manipulate him like everyone else." My mom sighed. "Honey, I know Brianna can be difficult, but you can't just bring a former prisoner to a family gathering without telling anyone. Your dad's upset, and Grandma June's worried." I hung up. For 3 weeks, I didn't hear a word from my family except through text messages. My aunt called me selfish. My uncle said I should have been upfront about Dylan's past. My cousin Katie, who I actually used to like, sent a long message about how I should consider other people's safety. Only my younger brother got it. He texted, "Brianna's a drama queen. Dylan seems cool. Screw them." Dylan felt awful. He said he should have told my family about his past himself, that it was unfair to spring it on them. But I told him it wasn't his fault. My family was just looking for another excuse to make Brianna the victim, same as always. Still, it ate at me. I'd finally found someone good and real, and yet, somehow, my family still found a way to turn it into a problem. Brianna might have lost for once, but she was still at the center of everything. When Christmas came, I couldn't do it. I stayed home with Dylan at his aunt's house, and for the first time in years, the holidays actually felt peaceful. Dylan's aunt made ham and mashed potatoes for Christmas. She didn't ask me any uncomfortable questions or throw in any of those passive-aggressive comments my family was so good at. Honestly, it was the best Christmas I'd ever had. Peaceful. Simple. Real. Then January rolled around, and I got a call from my cousin Katie. She said she needed to talk to me in person and that it was important. I almost said no. I didn't want more family drama. But there was something in her voice, something tight and uneasy, that made me agree. We met at a little cafe downtown. Katie looked nervous the moment I saw her. She ordered a latte but never touched it, just kept holding the cup like it was the only thing keeping her hands from shaking. "I need to tell you something about Brianna," she said quietly. "And you're not going to like it." I just sat there, waiting. Katie took a deep breath. Last year, Brianna started seeing a therapist. Aunt Carol made her go because she was having panic attacks. The therapist diagnosed her with something. I don't remember the exact term, but basically, she's extremely insecure and constantly needs attention from men to feel good about herself. "That's not an excuse," I said flatly. "I know," Katie said quickly. "I'm not saying it is." "But listen, her therapist told her she should apologize to you, actually confront the way she's treated you all these years. And Brianna refused. She said you were the problem. That you were jealous and bitter, and she hadn't done anything wrong." I felt my stomach twist, but Katie kept talking. "She was fine for a while, but then you showed up with Dylan at Thanksgiving, and something in her just snapped. She came over to my apartment that same night, crying like I've never seen her cry before. She kept saying she didn't understand why Dylan didn't care about her, why her usual tricks didn't work. She said she felt invisible for the first time in her life. Good, I said without thinking. And I meant it. Katie nodded, staring into her untouched latte. That's not all. I felt a chill crawl up my neck. What do you mean? She started stalking Dylan. Like, really stalking him. She found his old Facebook profile, the one he had before prison. Then she found articles about his arrest, tracked down his ex-girlfriend, and even messaged her asking questions about him. My blood ran cold. She what? Katie nodded, eyes watering. She's obsessed, Emily. She can't handle the fact that she lost. So now she's digging up dirt, trying to convince everyone that he's dangerous. She showed your mom his record. She even printed out news clippings about his case and showed them to Grandma June. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt like it was collapsing. Why are you telling me this? Katie looked at me, eyes full of tears. Because Brianna's planning something worse. She was talking about going to the police, filing a report saying Dylan threatened her at Thanksgiving. She wants to get him in trouble. Maybe even send him back to prison. I couldn't just sit back and let that happen without warning you. It felt like the world was spinning. Did she actually do it? Katie shook her head. No, not yet. But she's not thinking straight. She's desperate, Emily. And desperate people do crazy things. I left the cafe in a fog. As soon as I got to my car, I called Dylan and told him everything. He was silent for a long time. Then he said quietly, I knew something like this could happen. People don't like it when someone with a record tries to live a normal life. There's always somebody waiting to drag you back down. My heart ached. We have to do something, I said. There's nothing to stop, he replied calmly. I didn't threaten her. I didn't do anything wrong. If she files a false report, it'll get thrown out. But it'll still exist, I said. It'll be on your record. It could follow you. He sighed. Yeah, probably. That's when I felt it, a kind of anger I didn't know I was capable of. Hot, sharp, all-consuming anger. How could Brianna be so cruel? So empty inside that she'd try to ruin someone's life just to feel powerful again? The next 2 days, I couldn't think about anything else. I thought about calling her and telling her off. I thought about warning my parents. I even thought about talking to a lawyer. Then Dylan said something that changed everything. What if, he said slowly, we let her go through with it? What? I stared at him. What if we let her file the false report? He repeated. If she does, she exposes herself. There'll be proof she's lying. It'll be in her record, not mine. I didn't know what to say. Part of me hated the idea. Part of me wanted her to finally face consequences. But underneath it all, I felt guilty, like I always did when it came to my family. They'd trained me to feel that way. Every time I stood up for myself, every time I set a boundary, I was made to feel like I was the bad one. That guilt followed me right into the hospital. I didn't go because I wanted to see Brianna, I went because I needed to prove to myself that I was the bigger person. When I walked into her room, she was sitting upright in bed, a small bandage on her forehead. She looked surprised to see me. Emily, she said softly. I didn't think you'd come. I almost didn't, I said. Mom said you wanted to see me. Brianna nodded, staring down at her hands. I did. I need to tell you something. I waited. I was really messed up, she said finally, her voice trembling. My therapist says I've been chasing male attention for years to avoid dealing with trauma from when I was younger. I know that doesn't excuse what I did to you, to any of your relationships. I didn't say a word while tears rolled down her face. I've been jealous of you for so long, she whispered. You always seem to have your life together. You've got your own place, a good job, people actually like you. And me? I've got nothing but my looks. I was so afraid of losing that, of becoming invisible, that I tried to prove I was better than you by taking away the only thing you had that I didn't. My relationships, I said quietly. Brianna nodded. Yeah, and I know it's awful. I know I hurt you. More than I can ever explain. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I just stood there, staring at her. This was the same woman who had spent years making me feel like I didn't matter, who had destroyed relationship after relationship, chipped away at my confidence, and made me believe I was broken. And now she was sitting there, crying, apologizing, admitting she was the one who needed help. I thought I'd feel vindicated, maybe even victorious. But I didn't. I just felt tired, bone-deep tired. "I don't forgive you," I said quietly. "I don't know if I ever will. But thank you for saying it." Brianna's tears didn't stop. I turned to leave, but something made me look back one more time. "I hope you get the help you need," I told her. "I hope you figure out who you really are beyond how you look or who you can impress. But I'm not going to walk that road with you. Don't call me. Don't call Dylan. Just leave us alone." I walked out into the hallway and almost ran into Katie. She hugged me tight. "I'm proud of you," she said. I asked her what had happened, why Brianna had suddenly changed her mind. Katie hesitated. She told me that Brianna's therapist had called her that morning. Apparently, the police had reached out because Brianna had made an appointment to file a report against Dylan. But her therapist talked her down, told her it would destroy both her life and his. Told her she needed to face her feelings instead of trying to ruin someone else's. I felt dizzy. She really was going to do it? Katie nodded. "Yeah, but she didn't." "That's something, right?" I didn't answer. I just left the hospital and called Dylan. When I told him everything, he was silent for a moment. Then he said, "So it's finally over." "I think so," I said. "Good," he said. "Because I need to ask you something." My heart skipped. "What?" "Move in with me." I laughed, surprised. "What?" He smiled. "Move in with me. I know it's soon, but I've spent 7 years alone in a cell. I'm done wasting time. I love you, Emily. I want to build something real, something calm and quiet and boring in the best possible way." So I did. I didn't talk to Brianna again. I skipped Easter, Mother's Day, all of it. I kept in touch with Katie and my brother, but that was it. Everyone else could wait. In June, my mom called and asked if I'd come to the family barbecue on the 4th of July. I told her no. She started crying, said I was tearing the family apart. The family was already torn apart, I said. I just stopped pretending it wasn't. Then something unexpected happened. Brianna sent me a letter. A real, handwritten letter in the mail. I almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity got the better of me. It was long and raw. She wrote about her childhood, about being sexually abused by a family friend when she was 12, about how no one believed her when she told her parents. She said that's when she learned her looks were the only thing people valued, that her body was the only kind of power she had. She wrote about years of therapy, about pills and breakdowns, about trying to figure out why she kept hurting people. She admitted that my success only made her feel smaller, that she convinced herself she'd feel better if she could take away the happiness I had. She said she was now in intensive therapy, that she'd cut ties with toxic friends, and that she was finally trying to build a life based on something other than male attention. She said she didn't expect forgiveness, she just wanted me to understand. At the end, she'd enclosed a photo. It was an old picture of me and our friend Aaron at a party, both of us smiling at the camera. On the back, she'd written, "I'm sorry I made you feel invisible." The truth is, I felt invisible too. I showed the letter to Dylan. He read it carefully, then looked up and asked, "What are you going to do?" "I don't know," I admitted. "You don't owe her anything," he said. "Not forgiveness, not understanding. She hurt you over and over. You get to decide if she even deserves another chance." "Do you think she does?" I asked. He thought about it. "I think people can change." I did. But change takes real work, and most people don't stick with it. Maybe she will. Maybe she won't. But either way, that's not your responsibility. He was right. Deep down, I knew he was right. So I wrote Brianna a short letter back. I told her I'd read what she wrote, that I was sorry for what she'd been through, but that I still needed distance. I said maybe someday we could have a relationship again, but not now. She wrote back saying she understood. That was a year and a half ago. Then last month, Katie called. She told me Brianna was engaged to a woman named Laura she'd met in therapy. They'd been together for a year. Katie said Brianna was different now, calmer, happier, more grounded. She said Brianna wanted to invite me to the wedding, but was too nervous to ask. I told Katie I'd think about it. That night, I talked it over with Dylan. He said it was up to me, that he'd support whatever I decided. Would you come with me? I asked. He smiled. To watch you face your family again after all this time? I wouldn't miss it. The next day, I called Brianna. We talked for 2 hours. She told me about Laura, about how much therapy had helped her, and about how hard she was trying to become a better person. I told her about Dylan, our apartment, and our dog. It felt strange, almost unreal, talking to her like we were just two ordinary people catching up, not rivals circling each other. Before we hung up, she asked if I'd come to the wedding. She said she'd understand if I said no, but it would mean a lot if I came. I said yes. The wedding's in 2 months. I don't really know how I'll feel when I see everyone again, when I see Brianna, standing there in white, promising someone else a new kind of life. Maybe she really has changed. Maybe she's just learned to hide her damage better. Either way, I'll find out. Dylan says that's the thing about life after prison, you learn to take it one day at a time. You learn that people are messy, complicated, sometimes even terrible, but sometimes, against all odds, they get better. But sometimes they surprise you. He says, I would have surprised him that he never thought of coming out of prison and meeting someone who loves him despite his past. He had never expected a normal life. I tell him that he also surprised me that he was the first one who introduced me to Brianna. The first person to look through her games and decided that I was worth more. We sit on the sofa, Rocket lies in between, and we think about whether we get a cat. Dylan says yes. I say, we already have a dog. He says, that's why we need a cat for balance. I laugh, because that's my life now. Discussion about pets with a former prisoner, 7 years. The most honest and balanced person I know. My cell phone vibrates. It's an SMS from Brianna. Thank you for saying yes to the wedding. That means everything to me. I write back. Until then. There. I don't know what will happen at this wedding. I don't know whether Brianna and I will ever have a real relationship or whether my family will ever understand why I had to protect myself from them for so long. But for the first time in my life, I don't worry about that because I have Dylan and our dog and our tiny apartment and our quiet, boring, beautiful life. And that's enough. Actually, it's more than enough. It's everything.